All right, Matt here with BuiltRight Industries. Today I'm going to show you the install of our 2020 plus Jeep Gladiator bedside racks. We're going to start by installing the rear driver's side rack, and I'll explain along the way how that rack is very similar to the other three, and that should be all you need. So this installation requires just two tools, and for a set of 4 panels, expect it to take 15 to 30 minutes. So you're going to want a 3/8 inch socket with ratchet, a 7/32 Allen wrench, and a roll of masking tape or something that will serve the same purpose. And what I'm showing you here's the hardware that you're going to need for the installation of one large panel. We've got a 3/8 inch bolt with a white spacer nylon and a 3/8 inch channel nut. We've got 2 1/4-20 bolts with washers and channel nuts, and then we've got 2 of these rubber bumpers with small push clips that you're going to use to install them. So we're going to get started with the what is the most complex part of the task, which is really not too difficult at all, and that is this 3/8 inch channel nut. We want on the back side of that hole right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of tape on one side of this nut, and then I'm going to reach under there and tape it into place roughly so that it's in place when I go to install the bolt. Now if you have a second set of hands, a friend over or something, that makes this easier, but really it's not too difficult. Maybe trial and error, but let's take a look and give it a shot. So this is the view from below your Gladiator. You can see the wiring harness for the bed light running up the side of the bed there, and then this little reinforcement bracket here. And that bracket is kind of blocking our view, although you can kind of see it. The factory tie down, that loop, those two things actually bend a right angle and then are attached to the back of that bracket. So I'm going to try and overlay a CAD image that's going to show you a little bit more clearly where I'm putting this channel nut. But essentially we're going to try and put it in there that you'll be able to feel where that hole feature is in the bedside and try and line the channel nut up with that hole. So I'm going to do that right now, and then we'll show you inside the bed. All right, so coming back around to the bed here, you can see that I was moderately successful in getting that placed. We've got some wiggle room built into it, so this should be just fine. And as soon as you have the threads started, that nut won't be able to spin all the way around because of that tie-down loop. So on to the next step. Okay, so this next step is one that most people won't have to do, but I'm going to mention it here and explain it just in case. And the reason for this is that the trail rail system, the Mopar rail here, can sometimes be just a couple of degrees out of perfectly parallel with the edge of the bed here. And because our panels, they have a jogged bend here, but these two surfaces are parallel, it may cause the panel, more specifically this rubber bumper, to not be pressed against the bed tightly, which is what we want to keep it from rattling. So what you're going to want to do is we're going to lift the panel into place with these tabs against the trail rail, and what you want to see is that this small rubber bumper is firmly planted against the side of the bed. So I'm going to pretend here like it's not, and then we will make the adjustment necessary. Okay, so you can see my panel was kind of hanging out away from the bed a little bit. So all I'm going to do is take a crescent wrench here, and you might want to put a piece of tape either on your wrench or the panel. I'm not going to because I don't want to obstruct the view. But I'm going to take this wrench here and just put a little bit of a tweak into the panel. Just like that. It really doesn't take much to add a couple of degrees here. That's going to keep that rubber bumper nicely planted and your panel from vibrating at all. So now that we've got that taken care of, we'll go ahead and install the panel. All right, so the next step is to prep the hardware at the top of the panel. We use a 1/4-20 bolt and washer. And then it really doesn't matter, but I like to keep the serrations towards the inside of the bed. So I'm going to start this just about 1 full turn there. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, just enough to keep it from falling off. There we go. I'm And then we're going to move this into place and get those channel nuts started in the rail. All right, so we've got the panel placed here generally. And what we're going to try and do is keep these strut channel nuts horizontal and get them into place. Now, in the OEM Mopar trail rail, they're not going to push right in, but if you have them at a bit of an angle, panel included, they will drop into place. I'm going to try and zoom in for you here while I do that. All right, so I'm going to demonstrate that one time without the panel, just using the hardware so that you can see what's happening in that rail. So pretend we've got our panel on here. We're slipping the channel nut in there at an angle. And then it's like that. And then as we twist it, this nut rotates up to about like that. And that's what's going to keep your panel pinned against the rail. So after installation, you're going to want to look in there and make sure that the channel nut is at about a 45-degree angle, just like that. If it's not, you can loosen it, and you can kind of use your finger to rotate it around a bit and then snug it up. So that's what we're shooting for. All right, so with the hardware on the top of the panel all sorted out, but still loose, you can see that this larger slot down here is going to line up with our strut channel nut that we installed. So we're going to tighten up the top hardware, but keep an eye on this to make sure that laterally, side to side, we're still in place there, because as you tighten this to the rail, you are going to have a little bit of up and down movement available. So just like I said, keep an eye on that bottom strut channel nut. So let's tighten these up. All right, so the next step is to install our small rubber bumper. The reason that we leave this out until now is because now you might be thinking about where you want your clamps and such to go, and if this little rubber bumper's in the way, it's just something that you have to redo. So this rubber bumper can really go anywhere in one of these slots. I like to see it down in this sort of lower right-hand quadrant to keep the panel away from the bed. So I'm going to put that in now, and then we'll go ahead and put that third bolt in. Okay, so the final step is to install this lower bolt. Now the purpose of this lower bolt is really just to keep the panel spaced out and pinned down here at the bottom. That's what provides a lot of strength for the panel. If the panel is able to swing away from the bed, that can create a lot of problems because it's really putting a large moment or a large torque on the mounting points for the trail rail. So we're going to go ahead and install this spacer between the panel and the bed, and then we'll push the bolt and the washer through the whole situation. And there you have it. You don't need to get that real tight, just snug enough to not loosen on its own is fine. But again, this is a really important part of the entire system, because if we have the panel able to, say you've got a high lift jack mounted to it or something heavy, and the panel is able to pull away from the bed, this one of course won't because we've got it tightened down there, then you're putting a lot of twisting into the top mounting points here, and that's how you're going to have failures over time. And worst case would be if you damage the actual mounting points in the bed, because that would be obviously a much more difficult fix. Just to show you again down here, this rubber bumper that we put in, when we push on the panel, there's no movement. That rubber bumper's pinned in there nicely. That's because of that little tweak we added to the tab up here. So you can go ahead and make sure everything's tightened down, remove the tape from the back there if you use tape, and get your panels loaded up.